I knew something was wrong the moment the church doors creaked open. Not because my fiancé was walking through them, but because he wasn't. The string quartet faltered. 300 guests shifted in their seats. My father's hand tightened around mine, and I felt the first crack in my perfect day. "He's just running late," I whispered, more to myself than to Dad. But the knot in my stomach told a different story. I stood at the altar in my custom gown, the one Drew had said would make him cry when he saw me in it. 6 bridesmaids lined up beside me, my best friend Lacey at the front, her eyes suddenly avoiding mine. The minister cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should—" My phone buzzed in my maid of honor's clutch. Lacey pulled it out, her face draining of color as she read the screen. "Francesca," she said, her voice barely audible. "It's from Drew." The church fell silent. 300 people holding their breath, watching my world collapse in real time. I grabbed the phone, my fingers trembling so badly I could barely read the message. "I can't do this. I'm sorry. Please don't hate me." 5 seconds passed. 10. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. "Francesca?" My father's voice seemed to come from miles away. "Sweetheart, what is it?" I looked up at the concerned faces surrounding me. My mother in the front row, hand pressed to her mouth. My college roommates who had flown in from across the country. Drew's parents, confusion etched across their features. "He's not coming." The words felt like glass in my throat. "Drew isn't coming." The gasp that rippled through the church was like a physical blow. I stumbled backward, my veil catching on a candelabra. Someone steadied me. Madeline, I think, but I barely felt her touch. "There must be some mistake," Drew's mother said, rushing toward me. "Let me call him." I already tried. Zechariah, Drew's brother and best man, appeared at the side entrance, his face ashen. His phone's going straight to voicemail. That's when I noticed Zechariah wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Lacey, who had backed away from me, clutching her bouquet like a shield. "Where is he?" I demanded, my voice rising. "Lacey, do you know something?" Her eyes darted to Zechariah, then back to me. I don't— "Francesca," my mother said, suddenly at my side. "Let's go to the bride's room. We need to figure this out privately." But it was too late for privacy. The murmurs had started, phones were coming out, and I could already imagine the social media posts. Francesca Chen left at the altar. So sad. Sending prayers. I yanked my arm from my mother's grasp. "No, I want answers. Now." Zechariah stepped forward, his expression grim. "Fran, please, not here." "Then where?" I demanded. "Where exactly should I have this conversation? Where is the appropriate place to learn why my fiancé of 3 years decided to text me instead of showing up to our wedding?" The string quartet packed up their instruments. Guests began to stand, unsure whether to leave or stay for the unfolding drama. My father was on his phone, probably calling Drew, while my mother tried to usher me toward the exit. That's when I saw it. Lacey's hand resting protectively over her stomach. A gesture I'd seen before when my cousin was pregnant with her first child. The room tilted. "Lacey?" My voice didn't sound like my own. "Are you pregnant?" Her face crumpled. Zechariah made a strangled noise. And suddenly I knew. "How long?" I whispered. Lacey shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "Fran, please." "How long?" I screamed, my voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling. 3 months, she whispered. 3 months. While she helped me choose flowers and cake flavors. While she zipped me into my wedding dress this morning and told me how lucky Drew was. "Is it his?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. The bouquet slipped from my fingers, white roses scattering across the marble floor. Someone was sobbing. My mother, maybe. Or one of my bridesmaids. I couldn't tell anymore. I turned to Zechariah, who looked like he might be sick. "Did you know?" His silence was answer enough. I'd planned this day for a year. The dress, the flowers, the vows I'd written myself. The honeymoon to Bali. The life we were supposed to start together. All of it. A lie. I walked down the aisle alone, my train dragging behind me like the remnants of a dream. Guests reached for me as I passed, offering condolences, but I couldn't hear them over the roaring in my ears. Outside, the May sunshine felt obscene. I stood on the church steps, my makeup ruined, my heart in pieces, as reality crashed over me in waves. Drew wasn't coming. My best friend was pregnant with his child. Everyone knew before I did. I sank onto the steps, white satin pooling around me, and made a promise to myself. This would not be the end of my story. It would be the beginning of theirs. The next 3 days passed in a blur of unanswered calls, unopened sympathy cards, and empty wine bottles. I'd moved from my bed to the couch and back again, existing in a fog of betrayal so thick I could barely breathe through it. "You need to eat something," Madeline said, setting a plate of toast on my coffee table. She'd been checking on me daily since the wedding. That wasn't, bringing food I wouldn't eat and offering comfort I couldn't accept. "I'm not hungry." My voice was hoarse from crying. "I don't care. Eat anyway." She pushed the plate closer. "Starving yourself won't hurt them, Fran. It only hurts you." Them, Drew and Lacey, the names that had become poison in my mouth. I forced myself to take a bite of toast, nearly gagging on it. "Have you heard anything?" Madeline hesitated. "They're staying at his parents' lake house." The toast turned to ash on my tongue. Our lake house. The one where Drew had proposed, where we'd planned to spend our anniversaries, where we'd talked about building a nursery someday. "How thoughtful of his parents," I said, the bitterness scalding my throat. "Providing a love nest for their son and his pregnant mistress." "Fran, don't." I held up my hand. "Don't defend them. Not to me." Madeline sighed, gathering the empty wine bottles from my coffee table. "I'm not defending them. What they did is unforgivable. But you can't stay in this apartment forever, surrounded by this." She gestured to the wedding gifts still stacked in the corner, the framed engagement photos I hadn't had the strength to take down. "Watch me." My phone buzzed with an incoming text. I lunged for it, hope flaring despite everything. Maybe it was Drew, finally calling to explain, to apologize. But it was Zechariah. "We need to talk. It's important." I stared at the message, rage bubbling up fresh and hot. Zechariah, who'd known about the affair and said nothing, who'd stood beside his brother at our rehearsal dinner, toasting our future while knowing it was built on lies. "Who is it?" Madeline asked. "No one important." I tossed the phone aside, but 10 minutes after Madeline left, it buzzed again. "Please, Fran, there's more you need to know." More? What more could there possibly be? My fiancé had left me at the altar for my best friend, who was carrying his child. The humiliation was complete. The betrayal, absolute. Yet curiosity gnawed at me. What else was Zechariah hiding? "Fine. When?" "Now. I'm outside your building." I froze, then rushed to the window. Sure enough, Zechariah's black SUV was parked across the street, his familiar figure leaning against it. I should have ignored him. Should have closed the curtains and gone back to my cocoon of misery. Instead, I found myself buzzing him up, not bothering to change out of my sweatpants or wash my face. When I opened the door, Zechariah looked almost as bad as I felt. Dark circles under his eyes, stubble on his usually clean-shaven face. "You look terrible," I said flatly. "So do you." He stepped inside, his eyes taking in the chaos of my apartment. "Jesus, Fran." "Skip the judgment. What do you want?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so like Drew's that my chest ached. "I came to apologize, and to tell you something I should have told you months ago. That your brother is a cheating bastard? Little late for that revelation. It's about the baby." Zechariah's voice dropped. "It's not Drew's." The world tilted sideways. "What?" "The baby, it's not Drew's." He met my eyes, his own filled with a mixture of guilt and something else. something that made my stomach drop. It's mine. I staggered backward, gripping the edge of my kitchen counter. You and Lacey? He nodded, misery etched into every line of his face. It happened once, after your engagement party. We were drunk, stupid. I never meant for it to happen again, but it did. The pieces were falling into place with sickening clarity. How many times? Fran, how many times did you sleep with my best friend behind my back? Zechariah looked away. It became regular about 6 months ago. 6 months. Half a year of betrayal right under my nose. And Drew found out. It wasn't a question. 3 weeks ago, Lacey told him she was pregnant and that it was mine. He was destroyed. So destroyed that instead of telling me, he waited until our wedding day to run away with her? My laugh was hollow. Make it make sense, Zechariah. He didn't run away with her. Zechariah's voice hardened. He ran away from all of us, Lacey included. Then why are they at the lake house together? They're not. Drew's gone, Fran. No one knows where. Lacey's at the lake house alone because her parents kicked her out when they found out about the baby. He stepped closer. Drew abandoned both of you. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Drew hadn't chosen Lacey over me. He'd chosen neither of us. Why are you telling me this? I whispered. Because you deserve the truth. And because... Zechariah hesitated. Because I need your help. My help? I laughed bitterly. With what? Finding Drew. He's disappeared completely. No phone, no credit card activity. His passport is still at your apartment, so he hasn't left the country. But beyond that... Zechariah's expression darkened. I'm worried about what he might do. I stared at him, the implications sinking in. Drew, alone and desperate. Drew, who'd once told me that without me he had nothing to live for. Why should I care? I asked. But the tremor in my voice betrayed me, because despite everything, I know you do. Zechariah held my gaze. And because when we find him, you deserve to be the one to make him face what he's done. I spent the night staring at my ceiling, Zechariah's words echoing in my head. Drew was missing. Not with Lacey. Just gone. Part of me, a vindictive, wounded part, wanted to say it wasn't my problem anymore. Let him disappear. Let him suffer. But another part, the part that had loved him for 3 years, couldn't stop imagining the worst. By morning, I'd made my decision. I'll help you look for him, I told Zechariah over the phone. But not for his sake. For mine. I need answers. Thank you, he said, relief evident in his voice. Can you meet me at his office? I'm going to talk to his assistant. 2 hours later, I stood in the lobby of the architectural firm where Drew worked, wearing actual clothes for the first time in days. My reflection in the glass doors showed a woman I barely recognized. Hollow-eyed, pale, determined. Zechariah was waiting by the reception desk. When he saw me, something like admiration flickered across his face. You came. I said I would. I brushed past him toward the elevators. Let's get this over with. Drew's assistant, Vanessa, looked up in surprise when we entered. Her eyes widened at the sight of me. Francesca, I didn't expect to see you here. Clearly. I forced a smile. I'm looking for Drew. She glanced nervously between Zechariah and me. He called in sick on Monday. I haven't heard from him since. Has he done this before? Zechariah asked. No, never. Drew was always very reliable. She lowered her voice. Everyone here knows what happened. With the wedding, I mean. People are talking. Of course they were. My humiliation was probably the highlight of office gossip. We're not here about the wedding, I said sharply. We're concerned about Drew's whereabouts. Has anyone been in touch with him? Vanessa hesitated. His project partner, Ethan, mentioned something about getting a weird email from Drew on Tuesday. Something about transferring all his clients. My stomach dropped. Like he's not coming back? I don't know. Ethan might know more. Ethan, as it turned out, knew considerably more. Drew emailed me at 3 a.m. on Tuesday. He told us in the conference room, sliding his phone across the table. Read it yourself. The email was brief and disturbing. Ethan, I'm taking an indefinite leave. I've attached files for all my current projects. Please tell the partners I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Everything in my life has been a mistake. I need to start over. Have you responded? Zechariah asked. Multiple times. No answer. Ethan looked uncomfortable. Look, I don't want to get involved in personal drama, but Drew was acting strange for weeks before, before he left me at the altar, I supplied coldly. Ethan winced. Yeah, that. Strange how? Zechariah pressed. Distracted. Taking personal calls in the stairwell. Once I found him just sitting in his car in the parking garage, staring at nothing. Ethan hesitated. And there was a woman who came to see him a few times. Not you, he added, glancing at me. Lacey, I said, the name bitter on my tongue. No, older. Maybe in her 50s? Short gray hair, expensive clothes. They argued once right outside. Drew looked scared. Zechariah and I exchanged glances. This didn't fit anything we knew. Did you catch her name? I asked. No, sorry. But she drove a silver Mercedes SUV. I remember because she nearly hit me in the parking lot once. Outside, Zechariah and I stood in stunned silence. That doesn't sound like anyone I know, he finally said. Me neither. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the warm day. What the hell is going on, Zechariah? I don't know, but we need to check his apartment next. Drew's place was exactly as I remembered it. Minimalist, expensive, impeccably clean, except for the bedroom, which looked like it had been ransacked. Someone was looking for something, Zechariah said, surveying the upended drawers and scattered clothes, or Drew was packing in a hurry. I moved through the space that had once been so familiar, now feeling like an intruder. How many nights had I spent here, planning our future, believing I knew the man who slept beside me? In the bathroom, Drew's toiletries were gone. His passport, which Zechariah had claimed was at our apartment, was missing from the drawer where he always kept it. He lied to you, I said when I returned to the bedroom. Drew took his passport. Zechariah's face darkened. That doesn't make sense. I checked your apartment myself before coming to see you. Well, it's not here either. A horrible thought struck me. Unless what? Unless Drew has more than one passport. Zechariah stared at me. Why would he have multiple passports? I don't know, but nothing about this feels right. I sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly exhausted. I thought I knew him, Zechariah. I was going to marry him. How could I not know who he really was? Zechariah sat beside me, careful to maintain distance. I'm his brother, and I'm asking myself the same question. We sat in silence, the weight of Drew's deception hanging between us. I need to see Lacey, I said finally. Zechariah tensed. I don't think that's a good idea. I don't care what you think. She was my best friend for 15 years. She knows things about Drew that you don't, that I don't. I stood up, newfound resolve hardening inside me. And she owes me the truth. Fran, she's pregnant and alone. Because of choices she made. I cut him off. Choices that destroyed my life. So either drive me to the lake house or I'll find my own way there. Zechariah looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. But don't expect this to bring you peace. Peace? I laughed bitterly. I'm not looking for peace, Zechariah. I'm looking for answers. And after that, I glanced around the bedroom one last time. After that, I'm looking for justice. The lake house stood exactly as I remembered it. Weathered cedar siding, wraparound porch, floor-to-ceiling windows reflecting the water. Drew and I had spent last Christmas here, building a fire in the massive stone fireplace, making love on the bearskin rug his father had hunted himself. Now Lacey was inside, pregnant, with Zechariah's child. You don't have to do this today, Zechariah said as he parked the car. We could come back tomorrow. Stop trying to protect her. I unbuckled my seatbelt. She didn't protect me. The walk to the front door felt endless. What would I say to the woman who had been my maid of honor, my confidant since childhood? The woman who had betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible? I didn't have to decide. The door swung open before I could knock, and there she was. Lacey looked terrible. Her usually perfect hair hung limp around her face. Her eyes were swollen from crying, and her complexion had the sallow cast of early pregnancy. Fran. Her voice broke on my name. You came. Not for you. I pushed past her into the house. I'm looking for Drew. He's not here. She closed the door, not looking at Zechariah. I haven't seen him since the wedding day. The living room was a mess. Blankets piled on the couch, empty mugs on every surface, a half-eaten bowl of cereal on the coffee table. So unlike the fastidious Lacey I knew. You're living like this? I couldn't keep the judgment from my voice. I'm surviving. She sank onto the couch, one hand instinctively moving to her stomach. Barely. Don't expect sympathy from me. I don't. Her eyes filled with tears. I don't deserve it. I remained standing, unwilling to sit in this house that should have been part of my future, not her present. Where is he, Lacey? I told you I don't know. She looked up at Zechariah, who hovered awkwardly by the door. Neither of us do. But you were sleeping with him too, weren't you? The question burned coming out. While you were sleeping with his brother? Lacey flinched. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? Explain it to me. Help me understand how my best friend could do this. She took a shuddering breath. Drew and I, it only happened once. After he found out about me and Zechariah, about the baby. I froze, looking between them. What? It was revenge, Zechariah said quietly. Drew slept with Lacey to get back at me. The room seemed to tilt. And you didn't think this was relevant information? I was trying to protect you from more pain. Stop. Protecting. Me. I enunciated each word. I'm not fragile, I'm furious. And I deserve the whole truth. Lacey wiped her eyes. Drew was devastated when he found out about the baby. He came here, drunk, saying he'd lost everything. You, his brother's loyalty. He said he wanted to hurt Zechariah like Zechariah had hurt him. She looked down. I was vulnerable. Guilty. I let it happen. And then he left you too. I couldn't keep the bitter satisfaction from my voice. He was disgusted with himself. With all of us. Lacey reached for a tissue. The next morning, he said he couldn't go through with the wedding, but he couldn't face telling you the truth either. He said he needed time to figure out what to do. So he left me standing at the altar instead. The familiar rage bubbled up. How considerate. I begged him to talk to you. Lacey's voice cracked. I swear, Fran. I told him you deserved better than a text message. You're right. I deserved better than all of this. I gestured around the room at the three of us locked in this grotesque triangle. But that's not why I'm here. Drew is missing and we need to find him. Lacey's brow furrowed. Missing? What do you mean? Zechariah explained about the office visit, the ransacked apartment, the missing passport. That doesn't sound like Drew, Lacey said when he finished. None of this sounds like the Drew we thought we knew, I replied. But here we are. I moved to the windows overlooking the lake, needing space from both of them. The water was choppy today, white caps breaking against the shore. Like my emotions, turbulent, unpredictable, dangerous. Did Drew ever mention a woman? Older, gray hair, drives a Mercedes SUV? I asked without turning around. The silence behind me stretched too long. I turned to find Lacey and Zechariah exchanging glances. What? What aren't you telling me? Lacey bit her lip. It might be his mother. His mother is blonde and drives a Lexus, I said. I had dinner with his parents every month for 3 years. Not Elizabeth, Zechariah said quietly. His birth mother. The floor seemed to drop from under me. What are you talking about? Drew was adopted, Zechariah explained. Elizabeth and my dad adopted him when he was 4. I'm their biological child. That's impossible. He would have told me. He doesn't talk about it. Ever. Zechariah ran a hand through his hair. His birth mother reached out about a year ago, wanting to reconnect. Drew refused. A year ago? My voice rose. We were already engaged, planning our wedding. And he never mentioned this? Drew compartmentalizes, Lacey said softly. You know that. I don't know anything anymore. I pressed my fingers to my temples, trying to process this new information. So this woman, his birth mother, you think she's involved in his disappearance? I don't know, Zechariah admitted, but it's the only lead we have. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Do you know her name? Where she lives? No. Drew wouldn't discuss it. Zechariah hesitated. But there might be something in his personal files. He kept a lockbox in his closet. We already searched his apartment, I reminded him. Not that closet. Lacey stood up. The one here, upstairs. He keeps important documents in the lake house because it has a better security system. I stared at her, the implication clear. She'd been here enough to know these details. Details I, his fiancé, didn't know. Show me, I said, my voice hard. As Lacey led us upstairs, I made a decision. I would find Drew. Not to reconcile, not even for closure, but to make him face what he'd done to all of us. And then I would destroy him. The lockbox was hidden behind a false panel in the master bedroom closet. I watched Lacey slide it open with practiced ease, my stomach churning at this further evidence of her familiarity with spaces that should have been mine. Drew showed me once, she said, catching my expression. When we were all here for that weekend last summer, I remembered that weekend. I'd gotten food poisoning and spent most of it curled up in bed while Drew and our friends enjoyed the lake. Apparently, he'd found time to give Lacey a private tour. The metal box inside was sleek and expensive, like everything Drew owned. Lacey stepped back, giving me space. It needs a code, Zechariah said. I knelt before it, considering. Drew used the same password for everything. Our anniversary date. I punched in 0519, the day he'd proposed. Nothing happened. Try his birthday, Lacey suggested. I know what to try, I snapped. I entered 0423, the day we met. The box remained locked. Frustration mounting, I tried his parents' anniversary, his brother's birthday, even the date we'd closed on our apartment. Nothing worked. Let me, Zechariah said, gently moving me aside. He entered a 6-digit code and the lock clicked open. How did you know that? I demanded. It's the date his adoption was finalized. Zechariah lifted the lid. December 8th, 1997, the day he officially became a Ellis. Inside were the expected documents, property deeds, insurance policies, his will. But beneath those lay a manila envelope labeled simply, Margaret. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was a small collection of letters, all from the same person. Margaret Winters, with a return address in Boston. His birth mother, Zechariah confirmed, reading over my shoulder. The most recent letter was dated just 3 weeks before our wedding. Drew. I understand your reluctance to meet. I've respected your boundaries for months. But time is running out for me, and there are things you need to know. About your father, about your inheritance, about the circumstances of your adoption. This isn't about money, it's about truth. The kind of truth that changes everything. I'll be in town next week. Please reconsider meeting me. Your mother, Margaret. Inheritance? I looked up at Zechariah. Did you know anything about this? He shook his head. Drew never mentioned money or inheritance from his birth family. "There's more," Lacey said, pulling out a legal document from beneath the letters. It was a preliminary DNA test result, dated 2 weeks before our wedding. The kind used to establish paternity. "Why would he need a DNA test?" I whispered. Zechariah took the paper, his expression darkening as he read. "It's not testing if he's related to Margaret. It's testing if he's related to someone named Robert Winters." "Her husband? His birth father?" "I don't know." Zechariah looked troubled. "But whatever this is about, it was consuming him right before the wedding." I gathered everything back into the envelope. "We need to find Margaret Winters." The drive back to the city was tense. Lacey had insisted on coming with us, claiming she had as much right to answers as we did. I'd relented, but refused to sit next to her, taking the front passenger seat while she sat behind Zechariah. "I still don't understand why Drew kept all this from me," I said, staring out the window. "We were supposed to share everything." "Drew has always been private about his adoption," Zechariah replied. "Our parents never hid it from him, but he hated talking about it, like it was shameful somehow. But I was going to be his wife." "And I was his brother," Zechariah said quietly. "He didn't tell me about Margaret either." A notification chimed on my phone. A reminder for my final dress fitting scheduled for tomorrow. The wedding was supposed to be in 3 days. Would have been. The reality of it hit me fresh. I'd been so consumed with finding Drew, with understanding his betrayal, that I hadn't fully processed that my entire future had vanished. No wedding, no marriage, no children with the man I thought I'd grow old with. Tears burned behind my eyes. I blinked them back furiously. "Fran?" Zechariah glanced over, concerned. "You okay?" "I should be on my honeymoon next week," I said, my voice barely audible. "Instead, I'm hunting down my runaway fiancé with his brother and his pregnant mistress." From the back seat, Lacey made a small, wounded sound. "I know this isn't what any of us planned," Zechariah began. "Don't," I cut him off. "Just don't." We drove in silence for several miles before my phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Francesca?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Margaret Winters. I believe you're looking for me." My heart lurched. "How did you get this number?" "Drew gave it to me months ago as an emergency contact." A pause. "I know what happened at the wedding. I'm so sorry." "Where is he?" I demanded. "I don't know exactly, but I know why he ran." Her voice lowered. "And it's not what you think." "Then tell me." "Not over the phone. Can you meet me tonight?" I hesitated, looking at Zechariah, who nodded encouragingly. "Where?" "The Meridian Hotel downtown, room 712, 8 o'clock. She paused. "Come alone, Francesca. This involves things Drew wouldn't want his family to know." The line went dead. "What did she say?" Lacey leaned forward anxiously. I relayed the conversation, watching Zechariah's expression harden. "You're not meeting her alone," he said firmly. "She specifically asked me to." "I don't care. We don't know who this woman really is or what she wants." "She's Drew's mother," Lacey pointed out. "Biologically, maybe. But she gave him up. She's a stranger." Zechariah's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "This could be dangerous, Fran." "Everything about this situation is dangerous," I replied. "For my heart, at least." I stared out at the approaching city skyline. "But I'm done being the last to know things about my own life. I'm meeting her. Alone." "Fran, this isn't a discussion, Zechariah. I need answers, and Margaret Winters has them." I turned to face him fully. For once, I'm going to be the one in control of my own story. The Meridian Hotel loomed before me, its glass facade reflecting the sunset in shades of orange and gold. I'd checked in here once with Drew, celebrating our first anniversary with room service and champagne. Now I was meeting his birth mother, a woman he'd never even mentioned to me. "Text me when you're inside," Zechariah said as I got out of his car. And every 15 minutes after that. I'm not a child. No, but you're walking into an unknown situation with a woman who might have something to do with my brother's disappearance. His eyes softened. Just be careful, Fran. I nodded, surprised by the genuine concern in his voice. When had Zechariah and I become allies in this mess? The hotel lobby was busy with evening check-ins. I bypassed the front desk and headed straight for the elevators, my heart pounding harder with each floor that passed. What would Margaret tell me? What secrets had Drew been keeping? Room 712 was at the end of a long hallway. I hesitated before knocking, suddenly aware that I was about to meet the woman who had given birth to the man I'd almost married. A woman who, for whatever reason, had given him up. The door opened before I could knock a second time. Francesca. The woman who stood there matched Ethan's description. Silver gray hair cut in an elegant bob, expensive clothes, shrewd eyes. Thank you for coming. I stepped inside, taking in the suite. It was one of the hotel's best, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. On the coffee table sat a bottle of scotch and 2 glasses. I don't drink scotch, I said. Margaret smiled thinly. Drew did. I thought perhaps you shared his tastes. There's a lot about Drew I apparently don't know. Yes? She gestured to the sofa. Please sit. We have much to discuss. I remained standing. Where is he? I told you I don't know exactly. She poured herself a drink. But I know why he ran, and I know he's not coming back. How can you be so sure? Because Drew discovered something that changed everything he believed about himself. She took a sip of scotch. About his family, about his future. Stop being cryptic and tell me what's going on. Margaret studied me for a long moment. Drew isn't who he thinks he is. Who any of you think he is. What does that mean? It means his adoption wasn't legal. He wasn't an orphan, as the Ellises were told. He was taken from me. Her voice hardened. Stolen. I sank onto the sofa, stunned. That's impossible. Is it? The early 90s were the Wild West for private adoptions. My husband, Drew's father, was a powerful man with dangerous connections. When I tried to leave him, he punished me by taking our son. She set down her glass. I spent years searching, but Robert had changed Drew's name, falsified documents. By the time I found him, he was a teenager, settled with his new family. I decided not to disrupt his life. Until now. Until Robert died 6 months ago, leaving Drew a substantial inheritance. The estate lawyers tracked Drew down. She smiled grimly. Imagine my surprise when I discovered my son was living in the same city as me. My head was spinning. So you contacted him? Yes. At first, he refused to meet, but then he agreed to a DNA test, to prove I was lying, I think. When the results confirmed I was his mother, he finally agreed to see me. Her expression softened. He looks so much like his father. The DNA test we found wasn't about you, I realized. It was about Robert, Drew's birth father. Yes, Drew needed to establish paternity to claim his inheritance. She hesitated. But the test revealed something else, something that devastated him. What? Margaret refilled her glass. Robert Winters wasn't just a wealthy businessman. He was the son of Victor Winters. The name hit me like a physical blow. Everyone in the city knew Victor Winters, the developer who'd been indicted for fraud, money laundering, and connections to organized crime. He'd died in prison a decade ago. Drew's grandfather was Victor Winters? The Victor Winters? Yes, and the inheritance Drew stands to receive comes from those criminal enterprises. Margaret's eyes met mine. Money that ruined countless lives. I thought of Drew, with his strict moral code, his insistence on ethical business practices. How many times had he lectured about corrupt developers who cut corners? This would destroy him, I whispered. It did. Margaret's voice was gentle. He came to me the night before your wedding, in a state I can only describe as shattered. He said he couldn't marry you with this hanging over him, that he needed to figure out who he really was before he could be anyone's husband. So he left me at the altar instead of just talking to me? Anger flared, hot and bright. That was his solution? Drew has always run from emotional confrontation. Surely you know that about him. I did know that. It was one of the things we'd argued about during our relationship. His tendency to withdraw rather than face difficult conversations. Where would he go? I asked. If he wanted to disappear and think, Margaret shook her head. I don't know him well enough to answer that, but there's something else you should know. She reached for her purse, extracting an envelope. He left this for you. My hands trembled as I took it. Inside was a handwritten letter and a check for an astronomical amount. What is this? Half of his inheritance. He wanted you to have it. Margaret's expression was unreadable. He said you deserved compensation for what he was about to do to you. Rage swept through me, so intense I could barely breathe. Drew thought he could buy his way out of facing me? That money could make up for public humiliation? I tore the check in half, then quarters, then eighths, letting the pieces flutter to the floor. I don't want his blood money, I said, my voice shaking. I want him to look me in the eye and explain himself. I understand. Margaret stood, which is why I've arranged for you to meet him. My heart stopped. What? Drew contacted me yesterday. He's at our family's lake house in Vermont, hiding, thinking, drowning in self-pity. Contempt flashed across her face. I told him you deserved better, that a real man would face the consequences of his actions. And he agreed to see me? No. She smiled, cold and determined. But he doesn't know you're coming. I'm giving you the address. What you do with it is your choice. She handed me a slip of paper. An address in Vermont, about 3 hours north. Why are you doing this? I asked. Because I lost 20 years with my son due to a man's cowardice. Her eyes met mine. Don't lose your chance for closure because of Drew's. I stared at the address, a plan forming in my mind. Not just closure, justice. Thank you, I said, already reaching for my phone to text Zechariah. But as I turned to leave, Margaret caught my arm. One more thing, Francesca. Drew isn't alone at the lake house. What do you mean? He's with a woman. Her eyes held mine. Someone he's known for years. Someone he called his real soulmate. The floor seemed to drop from under me. Who? I don't know her name, but she has red hair. That's all he mentioned. Red hair, like Lacey's. But Lacey was with Zechariah, which meant there was someone else. Someone who had been in Drew's life all along, waiting in the wings. Someone who might have been the real reason he couldn't marry me. The Vermont countryside blurred past my window, dark and unfamiliar. Zechariah drove in tense silence, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. In the back seat, Lacey had finally fallen asleep, one hand protectively curved over her stomach. When I'd told them about Margaret's revelation, about Drew hiding at a lake house with a red-haired woman, Lacey had gone pale. It's not me, she'd whispered. I swear, Fran. I believed her. Which meant there was someone else. Someone who had been in Drew's life all along, waiting for me to be out of the picture. We should be there in 20 minutes, Zechariah said, breaking the silence. Are you sure about this? No, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure of anything anymore. But I needed to see Drew's face when I confronted him. Needed to understand how the man I'd loved could have betrayed me so completely. I'm sure. The GPS directed us onto a narrow road winding through dense forest. Eventually, it opened to reveal a sprawling property on the edge of a moonlit lake. A single light glowed from the house's large windows. That's it, I said, my mouth dry. He's here. Zechariah parked a short distance away, killing the headlights. What's the plan? I go in alone. You two wait here. Fran, I mean it, Zechariah. This is between me and Drew. He studied my face, then nodded reluctantly. We'll be right here if you need us. I got out of the car, the night air sharp with pine and approaching winter. Gravel crunched beneath my boots as I approached the house, my heart hammering against my ribs. Through the windows, I could see a fire burning in a massive stone fireplace, a living room with expensive, minimalist furniture. Drew's aesthetic, through and through. I hesitated at the front door, suddenly uncertain. What would I say? What could anyone say in this situation? Before I could decide, the door swung open. "I thought I heard a car," Drew said, then froze when he saw me. "Fran?" He looked terrible. Unshaven, hair disheveled, dark circles under his eyes. He wore sweatpants and a faded t-shirt, a far cry from the impeccably dressed man I'd known. "Surprise," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Aren't you going to invite me in?" He stepped back wordlessly, shock evident on his face. I walked past him into the house, taking in the empty whiskey bottle on the coffee table, the laptop open to what looked like flight bookings. "Planning another escape?" I asked. Drew closed the door, running a hand through his hair. "How did you find me?" "Your mother told me where you were." "Elizabeth?" "No, Margaret." His face hardened. "She had no right. And you had no right to leave me standing at the altar with a text message." My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. "You had no right to sleep with my best friend. You had no right to any of this, Drew." He flinched. "I know. Do you? Do you have any idea what you've done? Not just to me, but to Lacey? To your brother? To everyone who cared about you? I couldn't go through with it, Fran." He sank onto the couch, looking defeated. "Not after what I learned about my family, about who I really am." "So you're Victor Winter's grandson." "So what? That doesn't change who you are." "Doesn't it?" He looked up, his eyes haunted. "That money is tainted, built on suffering, and it's in my blood." "That's bullshit, and you know it. You chose the coward's way out because you were scared." "Yes," he admitted. "I was terrified of disappointing you, of not being the man you thought I was. So instead you became someone far worse." I looked around the room. "Where is she?" Confusion crossed his face. "Who?" "Don't play dumb. Margaret told me you weren't alone. The redhead. Your real soulmate." Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by something like pity. "Fran, there's no one else here." "Stop lying to me." "I'm not lying. Margaret must have—" A noise from upstairs interrupted him. Soft footsteps, then a woman's voice. "Drew? Who are you talking to?" I whirled toward the staircase as a woman descended. Tall, slender, with shoulder-length red hair, and unmistakably pregnant. "Vanessa?" I gasped. Drew's assistant looked equally shocked to see me. "Francesca, what are you doing here?" I turned back to Drew, the pieces clicking into horrible place. "Your assistant? You left me for your assistant?" "It's not what you think," Drew began. "Really? Because it looks exactly like what I think." I gestured at Vanessa's pregnant belly. "How far along are you? 5 months? 6? Vanessa's hand moved protectively to her stomach. 7. 7 months, which meant she'd gotten pregnant while Drew and I were engaged, while we were planning our wedding. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Drew couldn't meet my eyes. "A year. A year. 12 months of lies. Of coming home to me after being with her. Of planning a future with me while creating a child with her." "Why didn't you just leave me?" I asked. "Why go through with the engagement, the wedding planning, all of it?" "Because I loved you too," he said simply. "I couldn't choose. So you let a DNA test make the choice for you." The pieces were finally falling into place. "You used your inheritance, your family history, as an excuse to run from the mess you'd made." He didn't deny it. "And Lacey? Where does she fit in?" Drew looked genuinely confused. "What about Lacey? Don't pretend you don't know she's pregnant with Zechariah's baby, that you slept with her to get back at him." Vanessa made a small, distressed sound. Drew stood, his expression hardening. I never slept with Lacey. I don't know what she told you, but... The front door burst open. Zechariah stood there, his face a mask of fury. Behind him, Lacey hovered uncertainly. You son of a bitch, Zechariah growled, advancing on Drew. You've been hiding here with your pregnant girlfriend while Fran's life fell apart? Drew backed up. Zech, wait. And you. Zechariah turned to me. You knew about this? Is that why you insisted on coming alone? I didn't know, I said. Margaret told me he was with someone, but not who. Margaret. Drew spat the name. She orchestrated all of this. She wanted to punish me for rejecting her, for refusing the inheritance. Stop blaming others for your choices, I said, a strange calm settling over me. You did this, Drew. All of it. I turned to Lacey, who stood frozen in the doorway. And you lied about sleeping with him. Why? Tears filled her eyes. Because I thought if you believed Drew had betrayed you too, you might forgive me someday. The truth hung in the air between us, ugly and raw. There's nothing left to forgive, I said finally. There's nothing left at all. I walked to the door, pausing beside Lacey. He's all yours, I told Zechariah. Both of them are. And I stepped out into the night, alone but finally, mercifully free. The drive back from Vermont was the longest and shortest of my life. I sat in the passenger seat of a taxi I'd called, watching unfamiliar towns blur past, feeling strangely hollow. Not sad, not angry, just empty, as if everything that had defined me had been scooped out, leaving only an echo. Dawn was breaking as we reached the city. I directed the driver to Sophia's apartment instead of mine. I couldn't face my place yet. The wedding gifts, the photos, the life I'd planned with a man who'd never really existed. Sophia answered the door in her robe, her face shifting from annoyance to concern when she saw me. Francesca, what happened? I stepped inside, the familiar scent of her apartment, cinnamon and old books, wrapping around me like a blanket. I found Drew, I said simply. She led me to her kitchen, putting on coffee without asking if I wanted any. Sophia had been my mother's best friend, and after Mom died, she'd stepped into that role in my life. She knew when to push and when to wait. He's been living in Vermont, I continued, with his pregnant assistant. Sophia's hand stilled on the coffee pot. Jesus. And Lacey lied about sleeping with him. She's pregnant with Zechariah's baby, but she wanted me to think Drew had betrayed me too. I laughed, the sound brittle, as if abandoning me at the altar wasn't betrayal enough. Sophia set a mug of coffee in front of me, adding a splash of bourbon. Drink this, then sleep. We'll figure out the rest later. But as I reached for the mug, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Margaret. We need to talk. It's about the inheritance. I stared at the message, something cold settling in my stomach. I need to go. Francesca, you're exhausted. I'll be back. I promise. I showed her the text. This woman has been manipulating all of us. I need to understand why. The Meridian Hotel looked different in daylight. Less imposing, more sterile. Margaret opened her door immediately, as if she'd been waiting. You found him, she said. Not a question. Yes, with his pregnant assistant. I stepped inside without being invited. You knew about her. Of course I knew. Drew told me everything. She closed the door. Did he tell you why he really ran? Because he's a coward who couldn't choose between two women? Because he used his family history as an excuse to escape the mess he'd made? Margaret smiled thinly. Close, but not quite. She walked to the desk, retrieving a folder. Drew ran because he discovered something worse than being Victor Winter's grandson. She handed me the folder. He discovered who his grandmother was. I opened it, finding a DNA report more detailed than the one we'd found at the lake house. And a photograph, old, yellowed, of a young woman with my eyes. My exact eyes. I don't understand. Your maternal grandmother, Eleanor, had a child before she married your grandfather. A child she gave up for adoption. Margaret's voice was gentle. That child was me. The room seemed to tilt. That's impossible. Drew ran the DNA test to establish paternity for the inheritance, but the results showed something else. A close familial match to you. She took the photo from my trembling hands. We're related, Francesca. I'm your mother's half-sister, which makes Drew your second cousin. The implications hit me like a physical blow. We're related? Distant cousins, yes. Not close enough for legal or medical concerns, but close enough that Drew couldn't handle it. Especially with Vanessa pregnant, offering him a simpler future. I sank onto the sofa, my mind racing. Why didn't you tell me this yesterday? Would you have believed me? Or would you have thought I was lying to protect my son? She sat beside me. You needed to see for yourself what kind of man Drew really is. Does my mother know? Knew? The question caught in my throat. No, Eleanor never told anyone about me. I only found out when I was researching Drew's adoption and discovered my own. Her eyes, so similar to mine, held genuine regret. I never meant for you to be hurt in all this, Francesca. When I realized who you were, I tried to warn Drew, but he was already looking for an escape. I stood, needing space from this woman who was suddenly, impossibly, family. The inheritance, I said, remembering her text. What about it? Drew refused it, but half of it is rightfully yours. She reached for an envelope on the coffee table. As Eleanor's granddaughter, you have a claim. I stared at the envelope, thinking of Drew's attempt to buy my silence, of the tainted money built on suffering. I don't want it. It's millions, Francesca. I don't care. I moved toward the door. Keep it, donate it, burn it, just leave me out of it. Margaret studied me, something like respect in her eyes. You're nothing like him, you know. You face things head on. I've had practice recently. My hand on the doorknob, I turned back. Don't contact me again. Whatever connection we might have through DNA, it ends here. Sophia was waiting when I returned, concern etched on her face. I told her everything. About Margaret, about our relationship, about the inheritance I'd rejected. What will you do now? She asked when I finished. It was a question I'd been asking myself since walking out of Drew's lake house. What do you do when the future you planned disappears? When the people you trusted most betray you? I'm going to Italy, I said, the decision crystallizing as I spoke. Remember that art restoration program I got accepted to before I met Drew? The one I turned down because he couldn't leave his job here? Sophia smiled. The one in Florence? You'd be brilliant at that. They might still have a spot. And if not, I'll find something else. I felt lighter suddenly, possibilities opening before me. I need to start over somewhere that doesn't have his fingerprints all over it. What about your apartment? Your job? I'll sublet the apartment. As for my job, I shrugged. I've been designing other people's dreams for years. It's time to design my own. That afternoon, I sent 3 emails. One to the Florence program asking about late admission, one to my boss requesting a leave of absence, and one to my landlord about subletting my apartment. Then I called Tony, my neighbor who'd been quietly supportive through everything, and asked if he'd help me pack up Drew's things for donation. Whatever you need, he said without hesitation. Just tell me when. As I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from Zechariah. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long moment, thinking about all the tangled connections that had defined my life these past years. Drew, Lacey, Zechariah, Margaret. Each relationship a knot I needed to untie before I could move forward. Not yet, I replied. But someday. That night, I stood on Sophia's balcony watching the city lights, feeling the first real peace I'd known since walking down that aisle alone. The future stretched before me, uncertain, unplanned, and entirely mine. I wouldn't be defined by what Drew had done to me, or by what Lacey had done, or by unexpected family connections I never asked for. I would be defined by what I chose to do next. And for the first time in my life, I was choosing myself.